Okay, so we have a new episode of Legends and Leaders, and we're honored to have Maxine Clark here, the founder and chief bear officer of Build-A-Bear. So it's incredible to have you here. Thank you for coming.
My pleasure.
Awesome. So I'd love to just start with a bit of like your own personal background, right? You created the Build-A-Bear company. I believe you were in your 40s in 1997, and you've really just, I mean, it seems like that you were in the footwear space a little before that with Payless. How did you come on? Essentially, where did you start? Like, how did you get into this entrepreneurial route? Was it something you grew up with as a kid? Would just love to learn more.
Well, I guess I was always a creative person, which entrepreneurs are generally creative. I was always resourceful, and I always had a lot of ideas that I thought, and I also had a lot of curiosity. I wondered how things were made, where did they come from? Asked a lot of questions as a child. In fact, in my third grade report card, my teacher wrote that I asked too many questions. My mother got really mad about that. But I grew up in Miami, Florida. My parents were first generation Americans. They did not have a college education, but they hoped that I would have one someday. And luckily for me, I was able to get a college scholarship based on my journalism experience in high school as editor of my high school newspaper. And I had a great education, but I wanted to be a civil rights attorney. I wanted to eventually go to the Supreme Court. So I went to law school in Washington, D.C., but I had to go to work to pay for it. And my job was at the Heck Company in Washington, D.C., which was part of the May department store in the city. And I didn't really know, anything about much about retailing, but my boss got sick and I had to fill in for him. And I did a great job and got a bonus for doing that. And I had to take a leave of absence from law school, which I'm still on today, by the way. Then I got to they noticed me in St. Louis in the headquarters, and they recruited me to come to St. Louis, and the rest, as they say, is history.
Right. So it was kind of like a little bit by chance, in a sense.
Well, I think it was by taking chances, by taking a risk, by saying I could do that. I could take a leave of absence. I could go try that. And
Yeah.
if you don't ever try, you never know. And so many of us are on a definite path. Nothing's going to ever get in our way, and that can be very limiting.
Hmm. Right, right. And did you see yourself when you were a bit younger starting your own company, or was it more like it just kind of happened out of that?
No, I never thought about it. I wanted to be a lawyer. I was going to be a lawyer, a Supreme Court justice. I was,
Mhm.
definitely going to be in policy and government. I had a very clear idea of what I thought I should be doing. But because I was open to other ideas, I thought I was just taking a short-term uh, leave of absence. It ended up turning out to be my dream job.
Mhm. Right. And so I think that I read something that you had a friend, and the friend's daughter essentially saw this couldn't get this Cabbage Patch doll, and then you thought, oh, she made a mention of she can make it at home, and you're like, okay, why don't we do something like this with bears? How did this all arise, the Build-A-Bear story, essentially?
Well, during my time in the May department stores, I was always creating things. One of the businesses that I created was a department in the company called the Land of Oz, AHH apostrophe S, which was a children's dream place, and grandparents would shop there. So I had a lot of experience in thinking about what kids want. I was always a kid at heart. And when I left my job as the president of Payless Shoe Source, I came back home to St. Louis, and I said to my friend, I'll pick up the kids from school. And I picked up my friend's kids from school. We went looking for Beanie Babies, not Cabbage Patch. Cabbage Patch was probably 15 years before that.
Okay. Right.
And but I did help put Cabbage Patch on the map too. But I would just say that we went looking for Beanie Babies, and we couldn't find the one that Katie wanted. She said, "What? We can make these. These are easy." Well, she meant go home to my house and do a craft project. But I heard something bigger, and that day the idea for Build-A-Bear was born.
Mhm. And why did you decide to go with bears? Like, why not just go and create dolls or something else, like a different type of stuffed animal? Why bears?
It wasn't just bears. It was bears, bunnies, frogs,
Mhm.
dogs, cows,
Yeah.
all kinds of animals. We never had just bears, but it was called Build-A-Bear Workshop because the teddy bear is the quintessential stuffed animal. Everyone knows what a teddy bear is. But um, I knew that stuffed animals were something that kids loved, and it's a sort of a rite of passage. You have one when you're a baby and you drag it along with you on your vacations. And if you ever lose it, your parents go frantic. And then when you grow up, you buy one for your girlfriend or your boyfriend. And then when you get married, you buy one for your child. So it's a life process and has been around for well over 100 years and doesn't have any signs of disappearing.
Right. Makes sense. It's been pretty constant. I agree. Yeah. So essentially with with bears themselves, right? You created this whole process of building them, right? The Build-A-Bear name is this it's this workshop essentially. So you mentioned a bit about like I think you mentioned a bit about how that creates a connection with the consumer and the product as they make it. How did you develop this workshop approach and like the steps of it?
Well, when I was a small child, one of the things I loved to do was go on field trips, like whether it was to a bakery or to the dairy farm, or I always had a fascination with how things were made. And my mother, especially, like used to sew and put things together. So whenever I would ask her, "How do you do this, Mom?" She said, "Well, go look it up in the World Book, or go look it up in the library." And so I could imagine. I mean, I went to factories that made stuffed animals when I was overseas. But when Katie said this is so easy, we could make these, and Beanie Babies were these little tiny little, about the
Right.
size of your hand stuffed animal. I wasn't thinking about that. I was thinking about the security, the love, the hugging of a stuffed animal, the softness. And so I knew how to do that. I had made products all over the world. I made either I merchandised toys at one point in time in my retail career. I knew how to do this. I knew the processes, and I knew we could do it in a store. But I actually hired a friend of mine, Adrienne Weiss, who is a great brand builder, and she helped me design the store and to design the branding and all around it. And we hired an architect to help us make it real. And we opened our first store in the gallery. It took me 9 months from the idea to the store opening. Because I did have all the experience I needed to do it, and I had the money to do it. I just had to put it into 3D. And one of the things that was important was I put all of my good ideas that I had at that time into the business. I wrote a 10-year business plan.
10
Nobody
years.
writes that anymore. Nobody writes a 3-year business plan. And I had all the finances. I had everything figured out. And I even knew where I plotted out our stores, because the 100th anniversary of the teddy bear was going to be in 2002. And I wanted that to be at Roosevelt Field because Teddy Roosevelt was the inspiration for the first teddy bear. So I had a pretty detailed plan. And we actually, that helped me a lot. It was a guideline. And we did open our 100th store at Roosevelt Field. And we did have, but we exceeded all of the numbers that we thought we would do. It was a far more popular, faster and more popular idea than I thought it would be. I thought it would take longer to catch on, but people instantly got it. And that has to do with the fact that I have a really good feel for what the customer wants, but working with my friend Adrienne Weiss on the branding, we really together put our heads together and came up with something that was a colossal brand and is a colossal brand.
Hmm. Right. And just you think that it was the approach of like the workshop aspect that drew people in. Like if people weren't doing this workshop aspect and it was kind of just like kind of assemble a bear, you don't think it would have been as successful as it was?
No, it's an experiential. I mean,
Yeah.
we were the beginning of experiential retail. Like Apple later came on, and that you could pick out your case, and you could pick out which
Mhm.
how much memory you wanted. Kind of the same thing, but not exactly the same. And nobody's really done it since. It's not applicable to everything. We tried it with dolls. We tried it with cars. We invested in a company called Ride Makers, which was a model car company, not made out of stuff of plush, but made out of
Yeah.
metal and plastic. And it wasn't the same. It's the huggability, the lovability of a stuffed animal, and that you're never too old. We say it's for customers 3 to 103, and we're right about that.
Yeah, I agree. So you guys licensed many different types of IP for clothing, for other like different accessories. Did that have like a material impact on the business? Was it really that important, or was it just something like people already liked the process? Did it draw in new customers? Was it like that important?
We did draw new customers because our first license was the NBA,
Hmm.
and I'm a basketball person, so we
Okay.
got connected to the NBA, and we were very successful with that, and that opened the door for other sports licenses, from baseball to football to soccer to lots of hockey, many different things. And then we also licensed from Disney, which was an incredibly important partner, especially when we opened up at Disneyland and Disney World. But they do just bring you a different audience, and we were really good at interpreting their brand at the way they wanted it, at the high quality level, and charging what I would call a premium price, not the most highest price, but really living up to the brand standard that they had. And so people were then coming after us all the time, wanting us to license, but we try to put a limit on it so that we don't have too much, so that kids use their own imagination as much as
Mhm.
possible. But we've had some really fun partners. We partnered for many years with the Limited 2 when it was called Limited 2, and created outfits for your bear that matched the outfits at Limited 2. And we were very fortunate that that was also quite successful. And you see kids come in with their bag from the limited too, and they'd buy match their outfit, and they'd put it on their bear. It was very cute.
Nice. How do you think your experience in in the footwear space with Payless, how do you think that that helped you understanding how to build a bear?
Well, we had stores all over the country, and so operating a big company like that, it was $2.5 billion and 4,500 stores makes a few hundred stores look easy, But I learned a lot about the mall business. I learned a lot about the retail business that I hadn't really learned specifically because I wasn't operating a company when I was working in the corporate headquarters. But having been on the acquisition team of Payless, I knew a lot of the inside, family business scoop. And that helped me a lot. Also, understanding about a family business, understanding about being a solo entrepreneur who runs her own business. That the family, the Poses family that owned Payless before we bought it, taught me a lot about that and gave me a lot of confidence actually to do it. I didn't really think of myself as an entrepreneur. I knew I was very creative, and the company let me on their money do a lot of very innovative things. But when I decided to leave Payless and to go do my own thing, it was 1996, and the world was changing rapidly. The internet was coming on, and I knew that in a company like the May Company, and particularly Payless, it wasn't going to be ready for that. I knew that I had to create a company that was ready for the future. And even though we're old-fashioned about making your own product inside the store, we had our website from day one. We used all kinds of technology and we had the Find a Bear ID system where you could find your bear. We had a customer loyalty program from day one. We had all these things built in because I'm a technology crazy person, and I really wanted to be able to use the technology to make the customer experience even better.
Right. Right. Definitely makes a lot of sense. There were different brands that made it and didn't make it because of the internet early on.
Right.
But I think you have a unique hybrid of something that kind of took advantage of it, but also was in this real world, which there aren't too many of that started out. So that
No,
was
they're
quite
not.
unique.
They're not. One of the things that you asked me about the shoe business was I worked with a lot of factories in China, and I got to see how they run their business. And honestly, it's quite an interesting phenomenon how they built these gigantic factories from nothing. And we had many factories that made shoes for us, but the quality, the level of detail that people put into your products is when you see it for yourself, you really appreciate it. And I saw that in America when my early days in retailing, when I was going to factories in America and people were making products, but they were somewhat limited of what they would make. In Asia, there was no limit to what you could do. They would if you had the idea and you could draw it, they could make it. And that wasn't the same in vendors in the United States. Not even in the shoe business, but in the apparel business. Much easier to make a T-shirt than it is to make a pair of shoes. There's a million moving parts in a pair of shoes. But I did learn a lot, and I've had a wonderful retail career. Every single step along the way, I learned more than I did on Wednesday than I did on Tuesday, and I was going to learn more on Thursday, and it's still always a learning game. The customer is in charge, and you have to stay attuned to the customer all the time.
And do you think that, where do you think the future of retail lies? Because some people are like, all right, rate the retail spaces now. There's just online is really the way to go. You seem to have this hybrid approach and kind of prioritize both and had a unique experience for both of them that was symbiotic with each other. Do you think retail's got really a future, or does it need to be like this Build-A-Bear hybrid approach that's the future of retail?
Well, I think everybody's going to be hybrid, so to speak, but I think that many direct-to-consumer brands like Warby Parker,
Hmm.
um, uh, Untuckit, many of them have stores now
Yeah.
because they couldn't really reach the masses without having a store location that people just walk in and say, "Oh, I love that. This is great." So I think that the demand for stores is always going to be there. Of course, the right malls and the right locations, and you have to keep your stores fresh. But I do think that the hybrid has always been the case in some way, shape, or form, because people had catalogs that they would buy from. You'd get a catalog in the mail and you'd order it online. You'd call up a number, a 1-800 number in the old days. Then eventually you could buy it online, and you could always return it in the store. So I think people with the store had a very big advantage to take advantage of the internet generation. And now people that started as direct to consumer realize there's only so many customers they're going to pick up by accident. It's a huge marketing expense. Where in the mall, you're there and thousands of people walk by every day, and that's what you pay for. And you're having a place to operate your business. During COVID, many retailers like Build-A-Bear were able to adjust and actually respond faster to the consumer who couldn't come to the mall, wasn't allowed to come to the mall. The mall was closed, but you could drive up to the curb and pick up your product because you ordered it online and you lived in St. Louis, and they would deliver it to a store near you, and you could still have the Build-A-Bear products And that was a huge deal. And the flexibility of having a storefront in a city where they could be the warehouse fulfilling your orders was a huge help during times like COVID. I hope we never have them again. But the
Yeah.
fact that the company was able to respond so rapidly to the change is to our credit.
Mhm. Yeah, agreed. So did you guys think of expanding into other like I mean Build-A-Bear is a brand, it's a very hands-on brand. Did you guys think of expanding to like maybe things like theme parks or just other types of experiential opportunities? Was that something that was on
Yeah,
your mind
we're
at all?
already in theme parks. We're in some Six Flag locations. We're in Great Wolf Lodge. We're in
Mm.
ballparks. We're in cruise ships. We're in
Yeah,
hotels.
yeah,
We're at many, many different places. So I think we've already done that. We've been in ballparks since our first ballpark. We were in Disney in 2002 in
yeah,
Disneyland, and then we were in I think it was 2004 we opened up, or 2005, whenever the Philadelphia Phillies opened their new stadium, we had a make your own Philly fanatic station there and did phenomenally well. We sold out in the very first day we were there.
yeah,
We were in the St. Louis Cardinals Stadium. We were in Cleveland Stadium. We were in the San Francisco Giants Stadium. We've had a million of these
yeah.
experiences. And I think they just keep evolving as the customer evolves and finds new places to go on vacation. We want to be wherever the customer goes to have fun.
Yeah, I was referencing more like creating like a Build-A-Bear themed ride. Like things like that, like more of these adding on to the workshop like experience. But yeah, definitely
I
I'm
don't
aware of
know. I mean,
some.
maybe that's not necessarily our forte.
Yeah,
We don't, we are in the entertainment business. We're creating movies
right.
and documentaries and things like that now. So I think you'll see a different side of Build-A-Bear pretty shortly
Hmm,
that you haven't seen before. But I don't know that it's necessarily for us to create rides. But we create great experiences within other people's theme parks. That's
nice.
what and they're very personalized. They're if it's at Great Wolf Lodge, it's about Great Wolf Lodge. We have some really great stories to tell with other people's brands.
Yeah, yeah, agreed. So you made the decision to join the board of directors for Foot Locker. What was the thinking there? Like, why did you decide to do that?
Well, I didn't have to do it. I wanted to do it. I love business. I love retail, and I was asked to be on the
Yeah,
board, and it was a great experience. I think I was there for like 8 or 9 years, and it was wonderful to learn about uh, the consumer that shops at a Foot Locker, the diversity of the consumer, the diversity of the operations teams, the store teams, incredible, and how to run an even bigger company than just a few hundred stores. That's many thousands of stores, and also run a global brand. So I learned a lot that I could apply to Build-A-Bear, but I also learned a lot that I could just apply to my thinking and the young people that I invest in now and their businesses.
yeah. And so you decided to step down from CEO of Build-A-Bear in 2013, right? Well, why did you decide to do that decision then? Like, why did you think that that was the right time, essentially?
Well, when I started Build-A-Bear, I was 48 years old, and I had a plan to be doing something else. I have I now have multiple other projects, but I really had a plan to do some other things. And then we hit the recession, and I had to make sure we came through the recession. And I wanted to find the right successor, which we were fortunate enough to do. And when that happened, then I was able to go on and do these other things in our community that were really important to me, and also to invest in other women and minority entrepreneurs, which has been
Mhm.
a great fun for me to be able to have the time to do that. I mean, people were always calling me and asking me to help, but I was so busy with Build-A-Bear, I couldn't really help. And so I needed the time to really help people dig into their business and apply some of the things that I had learned. So now I work with about 12 or 15. I haven't counted lately. Entrepreneurs around the country that are interrelated businesses. Many are direct to consumer. Some are, um, uh, thinking about stores and going into stores, but really, really doing well. And I'm really excited about them and how they're the next generation, the future of. They can do all the hard work. I'm really glad to kind of be the advisor and let them go do all the stuff. But then I have invested my time and my treasure in the community of St. Louis and using a merchandising eye to solving community problems.
Mm. Right. And I believe you launched an app to help people find navigate summer activities, and that seemed to be to help a bunch of people out. So this has become this passion of yours. What are you planning to do further in the space of helping St. Louis and really just helping other entrepreneurs?
Well, I'm a solutions person. I think, when somebody tells me about a problem, and I think is there anywhere that has done this right? I go to look and figure that out. And then if they have already done it, then let's just copy it. Let's just figure out how we use that technique. But I one of my biggest projects is the Del Mar Divine. I brought a historic hospital, a 500,000 square feet hospital that was first built in 1904, and we reimagined it. It's on a really part of St. Louis that has been underinvested, or let's say disinvested for decades. And we bought the hospital and reimagined it into a multi-use real estate project. It has offices for nonprofits, a co-working space, apartments, 150 apartments. It has retail and service retail. So we have a restaurant, a bank, a pharmacy, urgent care, an investment office. And we've changed the face of this neighborhood. It's an important corner in this neighborhood. And we've been able to have a huge influence already in collaboration, but also in revenue, sales tax revenue for the neighborhood, and also security and safety that comes with numbers. So we're very, that's what I think about. It's not just the one solution, but how can you bring all the solutions to the circle of a community? And it's the way people used to live. They used to live in economically diverse areas. Like somebody was a teacher, somebody was a doctor, somebody was a professor. And you didn't have to have all people rich living in one neighborhood or all people poor. And that's really what we have here. We have students, we have seniors, it's just really amazing. I walked through the lobby and we have a swimming pool in our apartments. And I walked by the swimming pool and I saw such diverse people sitting by the pool. It's warm in St. Louis, as you might imagine. And I just thought, this is the way it's supposed to be. This is it. Like people can sit at a swimming pool in their apartment complex, all being from different backgrounds and nationalities, and have a conversation with each other. And maybe we can really get to the world's problems much faster. But when we all segregate and go in our own little groups, which is natural, but it doesn't get you sometimes where you need to go. And I think we're moving in that direction. And I have a couple of other real estate related projects that I'm working on.
Yeah, it seems to be a focus of a lot of the things you've done has been connecting people and building these types of relationships through Build-A-Bear, through this stuff. Why do you think that's a passion of yours? It's just you just enjoy putting people together?
I do enjoy that. I think it's the way I witnessed my family. My mother was a big connector. She had a school for children with Down syndrome, and she was always bringing people together to understand Down syndrome and to understand supporting differently abled children. And I witnessed that. I had great teachers. I just grew up in a time that it was so different. Everything was coming together, like, voting rights and civil rights and women's rights. And I've always been very, very involved in local politics and encouraging people to vote and to speak up. And so to me, this is America, and this is what we're supposed to, this is democracy, how a democracy works. And so connecting other people, it is not like a little teeny pot pie that only a few people can have a piece of. It's a giant, giant sheet cake, and we can all have a taste of the opportunity. And I really think that if it wasn't those times for me, I would have been, who knows what. But because those times opened up for me so many chances and opportunities that my parents didn't even have just one generation ago, I think it's so much more possibility. And the world is much more diverse. And there's so many ways to think about things. And there's a whole bunch of new products that I love that I would never have invented because they're not part of my culture, but they're part of somebody else's culture. And don't we all love them? Like now people eat Mexican food, and now people eat Turkish food and all kinds of different ethnic foods that we never would have tried before if somebody didn't open a restaurant that we could go to and taste that food. So I think that that's the kind of things I think about are in business. How many other products could we enjoy because other people invented them, not just white men or even white women, but multi-faceted young people who have a million ideas and have been exposed to many, many different cultures.
And if you were to start something now, right, you mentioned there's a lot of different cultures and opportunities out there to take products from there. If you were like, let's say you were at the point of starting a new company, what do you think are some of the best areas to enter into for young entrepreneurs?
Well, I always love the consumer products business because I think people buy stuff, and in order for them to buy some stuff, somebody had to make it, and somebody had to ship it, and somebody had to put it on the shelf. So it creates a lot of jobs, and you can see your results really quickly. That it's retailing is a profitable business and a relatively easy business to get into compared to technology or medicine or some other things. So I do think that I'm a consumer products. I like to touch and feel it, and I think about all the products that have come about. Just like cases for your phone, and then attachments to the case of your phone so you could put in your credit card, and like all these things that who would have thought of them? And I think that who would have thought of bear clothes? But I thought of that. I didn't think of it. Somebody had clothes for Beanie Babies, and somebody had clothes for dolls. We just adapted it to Build-A-Bear. And so that's what I think that is the fun of it, is thinking about what you see around you and how can you could adapt it to your brand, to your new products, to your new services. You don't have to invent the wheel. Howard Schultz didn't invent coffee. Ray Kroc didn't invent hamburgers. I didn't invent teddy bears. It's what you do with it that spins the difference and makes it even more successful or adds a successful attribute to the product category.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. So you mentioned like you wrote a book about putting the heart essentially into business. How do you really put the heart into your products? Are there things that you can do in terms of design wise, or is it really just about how you market it? What are some of the best ways?
Well, we let our customers participate too. Customers were always giving us children, were always giving us so many ideas. Our first board of directors were children. And we had about 15 children that were like 5 to 15 that were our board of directors, and they gave us tremendous feedback. Now they're all adults, and many of them have their own children, but they were so insightful. And I listened to customers all the time. I used to read every single letter and email that came into our business, and if it was addressed to me, I personally answered it. I still do that when letters come to me from Build-A-Bear, but for my own enterprises, the other enterprises that I'm in. And I'm trying to encourage the entrepreneurs that I work with to be that connected to their customer, because it matters. The customer cares. They notice when you know them. When they authenticity is very easy to spot, and fake and faddish is also very easy to spot.
Agreed. Look, Maxine, it's been wonderful having you here. I appreciate you coming on, and I wish you much success in everything else you're doing for the St. Louis area and all other projects to help people out. Seems like you got a lot of good causes you're working on.
Yes, I do. Thank you, Ben.